All right, it is time to Skol with the Super Bowl champions. Welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus show. I am Lupagus. I am joined by Tucker from KC Sports Network, representing the Chiefs, Vikings Chiefs, this Sunday, the big Sunday afternoon game. Tucker, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on. Always glad to get an opportunity to talk about the Chiefs. And I don't know if you know this though, Minnesota Vikings, the only team that Patrick Mahomes has not beaten, outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, but the only team that Patrick Mahomes has not beaten in his career.
Has he played them?
He has not played them. That was the Matt Moore game. That's
Yep.
what it was. It was the Matt Moore
That's
game.
what.
He was injured. But yes, that's a little fun little nugget coming to this game that we've been talking about in Kansas City.
That is a fun nugget. All right, I got to ask you, as a Vikings fan, we're all our Vikings viewers watching, the fans of this show. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to win the Super Bowl? We might never know.
I feel for you guys up there in Minnesota. I really do. We got Twins baseball going on. I've been watching a little bit
Yep.
of that going on and everything. I'm partial to the University of Minnesota. I like PJ Fleck, what he's got going on up there and everything like that. I'm big into college football and everything, but like that. But it's one of those things to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl wins never get old. And I know that it's easy to take for granted, especially after the second one. For the Chiefs fans, that you can be, we'll just throw another parade next year. And I think after the second one, I personally speaking for myself, I was more focused on taking it in, and more focused on making sure that I was like, hey, wasn't taking that for granted. And I think sometimes we can take it for granted a little bit, especially with like guys like Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Chris Jones setting records. I mean, you got all kinds of guys setting records on this team, paces that have never been set before, and it's easy to take it for granted. But it feels good, especially I'm on the younger end of the Chiefs fans that remember when they had that streak of playoff losses, and pretty much whenever the Chiefs went to the playoffs, something was going to go wrong. One of the ones that very vividly sticks out in my memory is anything that I can always remember when I think about Chiefs playoff losses is the forward progress rule, and you also have the touchdown pass Marcus Mariota threw to himself. So that's what I think of in Chiefs playoff losses. I know a lot of people now are thinking like, wow, the Chiefs are so lucky. The Chiefs always got these breaks going for them. That wasn't the case there for a stretch in the 90s to the 2000s, but now the other side of the coin, as it always does, is now going through. But just try not to take it for granted. It was a long-winded way for me to say. I'm just trying, as Patrick Mahomes is still in Kansas City, still in his prime. Just trying to enjoy every minute of it.
Sounds nice. It sounds really nice. I hope to feel it someday. I got to ask you, and I'm going to do it now, get it out of the way early. Taylor Swift, this is kind of a three-parter. Number one, are you a Swiftie? Number two, are you getting sick of hearing about it and seeing her in the crowd? And number three, is it becoming a distraction to the team?
Number one, yes, I am a Swiftie. Was a
Hell yeah.
Swiftie predating all of the news going on here. I was in the lines for Ticketmaster. I was trying to get all those tickets to get into the Kansas City show. She added an extra Kansas City show. Still couldn't get into it. Everything with Taylor Swift. Going to see the movie though, her concert movie. I already got tickets for that. So
nice. Well done.
I'm very excited for that. Have been a Swiftie for quite some time. I went up and even dug up some tweets. Like 2015 was when I was tweeting about Taylor Swift being
good. Hell yeah!
So I got good receipts on there. I do think the NFL is going a little bit overboard with it. Travis Kelce talked about it on his podcast. Obviously, it's the number one podcast in the world. I'm sure people have heard what he's had to say about this whole situation, and it is a little bit overblown, but I understand the NFL's stance of wanting to lean into a pop culture moment and leaning into a moment where they're kind of at the forefront of national conversation. I get it. I mean, I understand both sides of it, and I also understand why people are absolutely fed up of it because Isaiah Pacheco was in the middle of his touchdown dance, and they cut to Taylor Swift. And I know I wanted to watch Isaiah Pacheco do his little touchdown shimmy after a big run that he had, but it is a little bit overblown. I'm sure it'll calm down. It'll calm down with more time, as these things usually do. But I'm all for it. I like it. I think that like as much as the NFL can lean into it and get into another different demographic, another audience, it's good. I understand why they're doing it. But I do sympathize with people who just want to watch the football game. I get it. If you didn't care about Taylor Swift going into it, you're not going to care about Taylor Swift leaving this. I'll say that.
All right. I like it. Well, let's talk some football now. So the Chiefs are 3-1. I mean, obviously you dominated the Bears. which it looks like anybody could do at this point. So I'm not trying to take anything away from it. It's the Bears. But yeah, close games with the Jaguars, the Jets, led by Zach Wilson. Why, is there something off with this team this year? I mean, why are they not dominating? What's going on here?
Yeah, it seems the offensive side of the ball has been the side of the ball that's been in question, which in the Patrick Mahomes era, we haven't really talked about a whole lot. The defense has been holding their own, has been doing a really great job on the defensive side of the ball, but it's the receiver room where they lose Juju Smith-Schuster. They don't really get a replacement for him when you talk about in terms of free agency, adding guys to this roster. They draft Rashee Rice, who has been good, but has been plagued by drops. He was even plagued by drops in college, so that wasn't anything new coming into it that we knew about Rashee Rice. But they were banking on Sky Moore to take a big step forward. They're banking on guys like Kadarius Toney to stay healthy, which is a risk in itself to bank on that to happen, and that just hasn't happened yet this season. As you can kind of see, teams are playing a lot of man coverage against the Chiefs, and because these guys can't get open, and Patrick Mahomes is having to sit in the pocket. The pressure is not really getting to Patrick. I think a lot of the pressures that do come after like 3.5, 4 seconds because no one's getting open. I think that's kind of the problem right there. Patrick Mahomes at his press conference on Tuesday leading up to this game said that, he put his hand up. He took the blame for it. He's like, hey, I've got to be better about making decisions and getting these guys open and stuff like that. But as a good quarterback should say that. But I do think that there's kind of a uneasiness about the wide receiver room and the offensive production as a whole. Because listen, Travis Kelce's not getting any younger. The dude is 33 years old, I think, almost 34. And you're talking about relying on that guy to be your number one receiving threat at that age is tough. And I know I don't want to speak any ill will about Travis Kelce. It's blasphemy almost in Kansas City to speak like that about Travis Kelce. But he's not getting any younger. So they're putting a lot of their stock into that, into a lot of the guys having career years, which I think puts them in a very difficult bind when it comes to this year and getting offensive production from these areas. But one of the spots that they have gotten production from is that running back room. They've been able to run the ball fairly well, which is a kind of surprising thing for a Patrick Mahomes-led team.
So, I mean, I was going to ask you about the receiving core anyway, and you kind of brought it up now, but do they need a number one wide receiver? I mean, are they good enough where they can get by the rest of this year without it and kind of rely on Kelce and Pacheco and all those other pieces that they do have?
So I think it's a really interesting conversation because you talk about it last year. That was a conversation we had. They trade away Tyreek Hill, and they're like, oh, well, Chiefs fans are like, well, now we don't need a number one wide receiver. We just won the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. But would it have been a lot easier with Tyreek Hill? Probably. And I think that, I shouldn't say probably, it would have been a lot easier with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's a phenomenal football player. I would love to have Tyreek Hill back on this team and to have somebody that can always be open and someone you can always throw it down to. I mean, Justin Watson has been the number one receiver on this team in terms of yardage. I couldn't have told you who Justin Watson was before he signed with the Chiefs. So, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people could have, except if you're a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, but I think that there's a little bit of a need of a guy who can get open. They don't have a guy that can get open when he needs to get open outside of Travis Kelce, I should say. But when you only have a guy like Travis Kelce like that you're relying on, that makes things a whole lot harder on Travis Kelce when things break down. And I think that they've done a really good job with scramble rules and stuff like that. You saw a couple plays in the Bears game. I think it had some good scramble rules drills and everything like that with the wide receivers. But I do think they need somebody to come in and kind of be an attention grabbing force. And that's kind of what I think they were hoping Kadarius Toney was going to be, is an attention grabbing force where they can say, hey, we want to double Travis Kelce, but we know we have to respect Kadarius Toney over here. Something that I go back to Sammy Watkins when he was in Kansas City. Just him being on the field demanded defense's attention to Sammy Watkins. You couldn't just leave Sammy Watkins out there. I know that he was kind of getting close to a shell of himself there in Kansas City, but he still had the dynamic weapons. He still had the dynamic ability to get open and make big plays. They need somebody like that to kind of draw off of Travis Kelce. But I do think that they need to probably make a move. I don't know if they can win the Super Bowl right now with the room as it stands. But I do think they need a guy that they can kind of rely on to go get open outside of Travis Kelce.
Sweet. All right. Again, we're here with Tucker from the KC Sports Network. Link is in the description below. Go give him a sub. Say hello. Maybe harass him this week after the Vikings upset the Chiefs on Sunday afternoon. So obviously everybody knows about Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes, Chris Jones, maybe even Nick Bolton. But give us an under-the-radar player who's having an impact for the Chiefs this year.
So it's hard for me to say under the radar because I think Trent McDuffie has been quietly one of the best cornerbacks in I almost say college football, in all of football. But locally here in Kansas City, we hear about Trent McDuffie all the time. I'm not sure nationally if you hear a whole lot about Trent McDuffie. The Chiefs did trade up for him in last year's draft. I think the Bills released a video of when the Chiefs traded up ahead of them and they drafted Trent McDuffie. They chose to release the video of being upset that they drafted Trent McDuffie. So a guy that I think a lot of people didn't anticipate to be drafted where he was. I think a lot of people anticipated him to go sooner. He's played up to a blue chip pedigree so far. And he's been very impressive. I think he's like the highest graded corner who's played at least 150 snaps from PFF. Do what you want PFF grades, but I think that there's been very impressive leaps in his game from his rookie season to now. Even that's only been 6 or 7. I mean, in the playoffs, he started playing really well. So I mean, there's been a really good jump from that defense in the secondary. All those young guys out there. Joshua Williams, another guy that has been very good in the same draft class. He's been a very good corner, very sneaky good corner that the Chiefs were able to pick up as a UDFA, I think, out of West Florida. So I mean, like they've been able to snipe out these corners. You talk about Charvarius Ward. You talk about Rashad Fitton, guys that they were able to find on UDFAs, on practice squads to sign and make deals for. To come and perform at very high levels in their secondary. They did it the opposite way when it comes to Trent McDuffie. They drafted him high in the first round, and they were able to identify that talent. But Trent McDuffie has shown this year why he was worth that early first round pick.
Yeah, and actually a very familiar name to Vikings fans because he was mocked to us a lot. I know McShay had him right away and kind of hot pick. So a lot of talk a couple years ago in the spring about Trent McDuffie and the Vikings. So name Vikings fans will recognize for sure. So interesting to hear that he's doing well. I think you kind of mentioned this one, and you kind of answered. Well, obviously, number one wide receiver, probably the biggest issue on this team. If there was a second one, what would it be?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think right now the defense has been playing very well, but I think there's some things that, they're getting pressure, not necessarily getting home. That's always kind of been the knock against the Chiefs is they get pressures, but they don't necessarily get home. They're going to have Charles Omenihu come back, so it's not that big of an issue because they're not going to have him until week 7, but he's facing that 6-week suspension. When I think about some of the other things, the tackles, the offensive tackles that the Chiefs have brought in, they kind of overhauled those 2 tackle positions, bringing in Donovan Smith for the left side, Jawan Taylor for the right side. Obviously, Jawan Taylor has been the target of a lot of NFL officials this year in terms of the Chris Collinsworth basically airing out his dirty laundry on TV, on national TV, getting the memo sent out to teams. He's getting flags left and right. I think it's getting in his head a little bit. I really do. And he hasn't been playing particularly well. And probably the game that he didn't get flagged for all that stuff was probably his worst game. And last week, he didn't play very well. He did have that penalty in the end zone, which resulted in a safety. And I didn't know that any penalty that was in the end zone was a safety. That was a new thing for me. I learned a new thing about the NFL rulebook seemingly every week, I think. But he's been struggling when it comes to that. But Patrick Mahomes, again, is really able to negate a lot of those pressures because while last year he was the most pressured quarterback in the league, he only took the 3rd fewest sacks. So he's been able to evade pressure, use his legs as we saw he did on Sunday night against the Jets, which I think is a really underrated aspect of his game. But he's been able to negate some of these pressures that these tackles have let in. The interior has played unusually poor this season. The offensive line just in general has played a little poor this season, but the Jets defense is good. They've got a good defense. They've got some good players there. They're not playing up to the level that they should, but and they're only going to face tougher competition, I think, when it comes to different defensive lines around the league. So I'm keeping my eye on the offensive line. It's not necessarily one of those things where for the wide receiver 1 room, I'm hitting the panic button. I know where the panic button is when it comes to the offensive line. I might be eyeing it every now and again, making sure that it's still there, but I'm not quite smashed the panic button quite yet on it.
You're quite there yet. All right. Pat Mahomes, he was on the quarterback show just like our quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Yeah. What were your thoughts of the portrayal of Mahomes on there? Happy with it, or are you like, oh, God, I can't play root for this guy?
No, I think it was a good showing for every quarterback on this show. I really came away as Kirk Cousins, I think, was a big winner in that show. I think a lot of public perception was changed about Kirk Cousins. I know a lot of people in Kansas City now root for the Vikings. I've heard my girlfriend, when we were watching it, she was saying, I like that Kirk guy. I think I'm going to start looking at the Vikings a little bit more, watching the Vikings a little bit more because I want to see him do well. But I think he was obviously a big winner. I think I like a lot of that behind the scenes stuff with all that stuff. I think really the big winner with Patrick Mahomes was Brittany. I think you get to see a little bit more of the support system that he has. And listen, we know that Brittany takes a lot of slack on social media and everything like that, just being the wife of a famous quarterback. that'll happen. And especially putting herself out there as much as she does, that's going to happen. But I think that her portrayal was a little bit better. We get to see his support system a little bit better because as great of a quarterback he is, it's not just him in that whole system. So I thought that was a really cool thing to see, just the whole process that goes in every week to getting him where he needs to be, and just showing, kind of humanizing him a little bit, because these athletes, man, we see them like man in the arena type stuff. We don't really think of them as humans. So I love that humanizing aspect of it with the quarterback series. Jason Kelsey just dropped a documentary that's very humanizing, I think, of a lot of NFL players. The more we see that, the better, personally, in my opinion.
Yeah. I came away liking Pat Mahomes a lot more than I thought I would. So
that's good.
Yeah, no, I did. Even you mentioned Brittany too. It wasn't too bad. So, all right, Vikings are 1-3. We just kind of won ugly against the really, really bad Carolina Panthers team. Any chance the Chiefs? I know coming up, you got like 3 division games in a row after this. Any chance the Chiefs are looking ahead? Maybe not. Look, 1-3, easy win.
It could happen. I think whoever made this schedule should be put in timeout for a while when you talk about the Chiefs schedule, because they go Broncos, Chargers, Broncos. They play their 2 games against the Broncos within 17 days of each other. That's awful. They should not let whoever did that make the schedule again. But I do think, like, in the National Football League, anybody can win any given Sunday. We see that a lot, and we see Chiefs. The Chiefs take teams like last year the Texans. They took them to overtime and beat them. As long as you're winning games, that's all you can ask for, right? I've gotten past the point in the regular season where I want to see a 41-10 blowout like they did against the Bears every week. I've gotten past that. I just want to see them win football games, and I don't care if it's an ugly win or not. But I do think that Minnesota's got a ton of weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and I think that's going to be the tough part, is seeing how the Chiefs will cover all of those weapons and how they will negate some of those big plays. Justin Jefferson, man, I tell you what, we'd love to have Justin Jefferson in Kansas City right about now.
Yeah, he's nice.
And he is a dude. He is one of those guys where I watch and my jaw drops every time I watch him. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with him, if they pull a Jerry Sneed on him, who's got a little bit bigger of a body, who started following guys around a little bit more. But that's the biggest worry for me. I mean, they just got to do their jobs. They got to be fundamentally sound, everything like that the coach is going to tell them to do, obviously. But I think that's going to be a big thing, is limiting the big plays, limiting the explosive plays, and just kind of taking what they're going to be given. But yeah, I mean, I could see this game being close. I think the line is, what is it, 5.5 right now?
Yep, I think that's right.
I could see the Vikings easily covering that, truthfully. The Chiefs are not a very good covering team when it comes to betting them against the spread. And Andy Reid doesn't really blow teams out. The Chiefs have not historically blown teams out, besides that garbage Bears team.
Thank you.
I'm in safe territory here, where I can say the Bears stink. That is a bad football team. That is a bad organization. There's not a lot of good things going on, and I feel awful for Ryan Poles over there. That's a Chiefs guy. I knew he was going to do great things in the NFL. It's not going to happen in Chicago, because that's a bad organization. That's a bad football team. There's a lot going on there. I think they've given up already. I know you asked me, you want me to talk about Chiefs Vikings, but the Bears are so bad that I can't not talk about how those players have already given up 4 weeks into the season. It's kind of absurd.
Yeah, didn't Chase Claypool just say, "I'm not coming, I'm not showing up"?
Yeah, then they're like, "Okay, that's fine. You can just stay home." Like, that's wild. I wish my boss would tell me to stay home and still pay me. That'd be awesome.
They're in our division. We hate them. You can say all the negative stuff you want about the Bears, Packers, Lions, whatever you want. We're here for it. We love it. So offensively, okay, you're scared of the Vikings receiving core. Anything with this Vikings defense? Anywhere we can maybe find an advantage here? I know you mentioned maybe the tackles are a little bit weak. Anything else?
Yeah, I think the coverage, like I mentioned, a lot of teams have been playing man coverage, but the Jets played an unusual amount of zone coverage, and I think the Vikings play a lot of zone coverage as well, if I remember off the top of my head. So that could be really interesting too, especially if these guys have been struggling to get open. Travis Kelce, he's a zone beater in himself, but he's kind of struggling through things. He had that knee injury early on in the right before the Lions game in the season opener, and I think he's still kind of feeling the effects of it. It's been a very interesting period here with the Chiefs offense, a period that we haven't in Kansas City faced much since Patrick Mahomes arrived, of seeing a lack of offensive production. But I think if it's going to be one thing, it's going to be limiting Travis Kelce and see how the Vikings do that, because I know that Byron Murphy was already saying that they're really focused in on. I thought that was weird. I didn't peg Byron Murphy for a guy to talk that publicly about that. But
Don't get under Travis Kelce's skin.
Right.
You don't need to do that. Don't do it.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be the big thing is limiting Travis Kelce because that seems like the safety valve that Patrick Mahomes has grown to love, obviously. It's easy to love that safety valve, but limiting him is going to be the worry that I would have for the Chiefs offense.
I mean, it's fair to say you guys are in a dynasty right now. How long do you think your window is going to be open here to continue to add trophies to that trophy case?
That's a great question. And I think that how wide that window is, I think any year that you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, the window is going to be open. Maybe that's naive for me to say, but I think the more years that you have Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes, that window is going to be a little bit bigger. Any year that you're going to have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, that's probably going to be at its biggest. I don't know how many years Travis Kelce still has left in the tank. To be realistic, I think he has 3 years left on his deal. Could I see him retiring after his contract is up? Absolutely. How many years does Andy Reid still have left in the tank? I don't really know either. He's getting up there in age. I think he's either one of the third or fourth oldest coaches in the NFL. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't know. Could he retire at the same time as Travis Kelce? That could be a realistic possibility. Then you're looking at probably Matt Nagy as your head coach if he doesn't go anywhere but in these 3 years, and with Patrick Mahomes, and you're going to have to find another cast and crew of receivers to go along with him. So I think that any year that Patrick Mahomes is there, the door is going to be ajar, right? It's going to be, you can probably be able to walk through it. That door gets wider with the healthy Kelce, healthy everything like that, healthy Andy Reid and everything. And people forget he had a health scare at the beginning of last year with his heart and everything like that. But I don't like to think about it very much. Because it could be the era of Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes could be over within the next half decade. I mean, but I think that any year that Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, you got to feel pretty decent going into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one quick one, and then final. Would you guys beat the Lions with Chris Jones and Travis Kelce in there?
I want to think so. I would like to think that we would have. Travis Kelce would have made a play. They would have gotten at least one more point. I think that Chris Jones probably would have made a play when it mattered. I'm sure Lions fans loved that. I'm sure that they were very happy with that game. But it was one of those things, especially for in Kansas City, we were just like, okay, that's fine. I mean, we lost by 1 point to a Lions team that seems to be pretty good. Yeah. At our home, without 2 of our 3 best players. We'll take that. Fine. Okay. It was one of those things.
Okay. I just want any Lions fans watching. We're pretty close to Mike, who runs the Lions channel, and if he's watching, I want him to know that. So that's good. Some Bears bashing here, some Lions bashing. We'll take all we can get here. We like it. All right. Final. How do you see this one shaking out on Sunday? What's going to be the final?
Oh, gosh. I think it's going to be a closer game than probably the national people and a lot of people think that it'll be. That 5.5 line, I think, is going to be pretty darn close to it. The Chiefs have shown an ability to I think Travis Kelce said this, and it was kind of an interesting way to put it. It was either Travis or Jason on the New Heights podcast of, the Chiefs it does seem like the Chiefs get a lot of benefit calls, right? But they get a lot of calls that put them in situations where they have to benefit off of them. They still execute and benefit off of in the situations that they need to, and they take advantage of mistakes. They've shown that for a while. And if you look back at even the years that the Chiefs have won the Super Bowl, their Octobers, their Novembers, their Decembers, when they're kind of in starting the dog days of the season, sometimes slogs. Those games are just get out there. Let's win ugly. So I would anticipate this one to be a kind of low scoring game. I'm kind of anticipating that, but I would see like a 23-20 type of game. But I gotta give it in the Chiefs' favor. 23-20. I think they find a way to pull it out.
All right. Again, Tucker, KC Sports Network. Give them a subscription. Why not? Follow them. Harass them this week. Appreciate you coming in, man. Good luck through this season. Maybe not so much Sunday, but the rest of the year anyway.
I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.